Hello, my friend from Nero the Black Dog. Today, my task is to bring you the answers to the questions I posed to the Yazidi guy who agreed some time ago to be interviewed here on the channel. The Yazidi population, being for Islam a religious group not included among the religions of the book, has been the subject of numerous persecution over the centuries, of which the last and sadly famous one dates back to 2014 at the hands of ISIS militias. I talked about the Yazidis in the video before this one. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend you to watch it and then, if you like, to come back here. Unfortunately, you will not hear the voice of the interviewee here, because it is not easy to communicate with that part of the world. The connection is terribly unstable, and we soon realized that it would have been impossible to receive video material, which is why our guest offered to entrust me with his answers in writing. Given the importance of this testimony, I ask you to be polite in your comments and to understand the point of view of whoever is telling us his story, because when we are faced with statements that may seem difficult to digest, we should keep in mind that it is an experience with which we can only try to identify ourselves. Lastly, I wanted to let you know that the images that accompany the interview were chosen by our guest himself. It's time to let our guy speak now. We catch up at the end of the video. Nero. How was your life in Iraq before ISIS as a Yazidi minority? To be honest, it was not a good time. Racism toward Yazidis were always a common thing, especially from Arabs who were moved to Sjar by the Iraqi regime between 2003 to 2013. Terrorists were everywhere. People would get killed on the roads all the time, to a point where every Yazidi has someone from his family killed or missing from that period. Yazidi farmers who lived in the southern region were always in danger. A lot of them were attacked, robbed, or even killed. People think that 2014 was the first attempt to genocide Yazidis, but in 2007, Al-Qaeda, with the help of Sunni Arabs of Sjar, committed an attempt of genocide against the Yazidis of Kathania town and the village of Siba when they blew up 4 trucks filled with explosive in the middle of the town, killing more than 300 Yazidis. Most of them were children and women and elders. I think this is a good example of why this period was not good for us. What happened when ISIS militias arrived in 2014? Did you immediately sense that you were in danger? When we first heard about ISIS, we thought they were another ordinary Middle East militia. We did watch some of their beheadings video on the news, but it wasn't really something new to us. Sunni and Shia Muslims were always in conflict, and we thought it was another civil war. Even when the Kurdish forces ran from Sinjar and ISIS arrived, we didn't attempt to run. We never believed it was possible to genocide a minority in 2014, and ISIS, with the help of Arabs from Sinjar, made us believe that we wouldn't be harmed. That is why we didn't sense danger. When did the persecutions begin? Did ISIS impose conditions on you, or did you escape before they arrived? Or did they force you to leave? Everything began on the 3rd of October. ISIS have no such beliefs as imposing condition or forcing us to leave. They just believe that we, the minorities, are infidels and we deserve to be killed and raped because our lives are so cheap for them. They were there to kill us on the first day, but they waited a day to calm us down, to execute their plans carefully and kill as many people as possible. And they achieved this with the help of Muslims from Sinjar, as the Yazidis believed them, trust them, since they lived together for decades. Have you personally witnessed the violence perpetrated against your people? I was 10 years old when ISIS took over Sinjar. They started killing thousands of people. I ran with my family to seek shelter and safety on a mountain. It was the middle of summer. We didn't have food or water. We were about to starve to death. I stayed on that mountain for 8 days, and I didn't have shoes on at that time. But my story isn't even close to what the people of Kojo village went through. Their village, Kojo, is located south of Sinjar. This case is very different from others because ISIS besieged the village for 2 weeks and invaded it on the 15th of October. Men and women were separated. The men were killed in mass graves. The women were taken to Syria through the border. And the saddest thing is that the elders of the village were buried alive in a mass grave in West Sjar. Mass graves are still being found even after 10 years, and some people are still missing. Your friend from Mosul claims that the original Islam is the Islam put into practice by ISIS. Do you agree with that? If the Islam that Muhammad practiced and followed is the real Islam, then I agree this is what Muslims did in the 7th century, and this is what they do in the 21st century. There is a case similar to what ISIS did. The story of the Jews of Banu Qurayza is a disturbing case where Muhammad invaded a village, ordered his men to take the women and children, and beheaded the men who have facial hair. By the way, some people get facial hair when they are 12 years old. Anyone who doesn't believe me can search for this case on Wikipedia. How was the situation in your region after militiamen left? In 2017, Sjar was regained. At that time, it was something you would only see in an apocalypse movie. Houses, schools, hospitals, everything was destroyed. It is sad that until today, civilians are not paid by the government to rebuild their houses. ERW and IED were everywhere, some places filled with booby traps. Mass graves are still being found each day, and it takes months to recognize bodies. Armed forces are a headache, since Sjar is now controlled by the Iraqi Shia force and the Kurdish force, PKK, and the Iraqi army. How is the situation now for you, Yazidis? Are you still in a condition of discrimination even though the caliphate is now a distant bad memory? We will always be in a condition of discrimination. Iraq is controlled by militias. They act only when it's to their benefits. Yazidis have been trying for years to at least be considered Yazidis, not just regular Kurds with a different religion. The Iraqi government have always refused. Armenia considers Yazidi as an ethnic minority separated from the Kurds by their home country. Iraq has always refused the idea. Some minorities in Iraq are called Muslims in their IDs. The Caucasus are an ethno-religion in Iraq that are called Muslims in their IDs. This is the 21st century, but feels like Iraq is stuck in the 7th century. Kurds have been racist again lately. This year, an old picture of a burned mosque in Sjar was posted on social media with fake information claiming that the mosque was burned by the Yazidis. The photo was from 2017. Thousands of hate speeches were posted by Kurdish religious men. Some of them were very famous. A lot of video calls and group messages were leaked of Kurdish jihadists who were planning to attack refugee camps with machine guns. What do you hope for the political future of Iraq and for the future of your people? For Iraq, I would say another invasion like 2003, so we can get rid of the militias and illegal armed force, but this time without stealing our resources from us. And for the Yazidis, I would like all to leave Iraq to another country. What do you want for yourself? Do you have a dream you want to pursue? I want people to remember me as a good man before anything else. I had a lot of dreams, but this shithole took them away from me. I always wanted to be a writer and a director, or a firewatch. This is an important testimony relating to an event which occurred in the recent past. And the fact that in the recent past mass exterminations have taken place and are still taking place makes us understand how much the oppression of a group of human beings to the detriment of others based on religions, ethnic, political assumptions, and economic or territorial opportunity is a human characteristic that we struggle to shake off. And even more so, we shake off what happened by quickly forgetting about it. When these things do not happen at the threshold of our house, when they happen to those who are far away from us, not only geographically, but also culturally, ideologically, morally, when television and the media don't cover them in the news anymore. If you don't talk about it, it's not happening. We think that having come to terms with the horrors of our past, strengthened by our beautiful and modern constitutions, is enough to keep us safe from the reappearance of those monsters. Such horrible things as final solutions can come back at any time and in any place at the hands of anyone who is asleep in that sleep of reason that produces monsters ready to identify enemies against whom they unleash their aggression instead of looking themselves in the mirror. There is no more irrecoverable monster than the one affected by the stubborn refusal to look himself in the face, and of those who look at him and remain silent out of fear, guilt, or unwillingness to deviate from the safe path of political correctness. We don't need pointing fingers. We need mirrors shoved in the faces of those who are convinced that they are acting comforted by the certainty of being right, and strong and shameless voices that loudly ask for international institutions that really count to defend universal values and international courts which work for good as a guarantee for humanity as a whole, without religious, ideological, and political interferences. A heartfelt thank you and my best wishes for everything to our Yazidi friend. And as usual, thanks to you. See you soon. Nero.